Are you an empath or somebody who from a young age had to be hyper vigilant because you were brought up in an environment where there was a lot of chaos or unpredictability? Did you have parents who didn't have the tools to control their emotions, express their emotions, or communicate in a healthy way? I wanted to share something with you. A thought, a download. You know how you're around people sometimes in life and you feel this energy off of them. People make you feel uncomfortable around them. You feel like this person, for some reason, just doesn't like you. They have a problem with you, but they'll never say it. They'll tell you things like, it's all in your head. That's not what I meant. I don't know why you feel that way, because it's not how I feel. That is not the truth. And for the life of you, you do not believe it, because you feel it on a soul level that this person just doesn't like you. What if they weren't lying? What if it was projection all along? Projection from them and projection from you. The other week I was driving and I came to a roadblock, and there was this policeman. He was standing in the road and he was holding up the traffic in order to let people go through on the other side. And he was quite a bit away from me and he had his hand up signaling me to stop. So I'm slowing down, but I'm preparing to stop a little bit closer to where he is. And this man's got his hand up and he's moving it around, and the energy behind it felt so aggressive. I could feel the energy. I could feel his emotions behind the gesture, to the point where I was quite offended. I said out loud, "Stop screaming at me with your energy." And the energy behind it, I could feel it. He was like, he thought I was stupid, like, "Stop, you idiot." That was the kind of energy. Like, it was really aggressive energy. His fears came up. He wasn't sure if I was going to stop or keep going, even though I had every intention on stopping. And this triggered something in me from my childhood. I have never had a very good relationship with my mom. I always felt as if she didn't like me. I felt like she didn't value me, respect me, and I felt unloved by her. My entire childhood, I felt like I was treated differently from my siblings. And a few months back, I had a conversation with her about this. I opened up, and to her, in her mind, she still says to this day that that isn't the case, that it wasn't that she didn't love me. It wasn't that she didn't like me. And she treated me differently because we were different people. And this is a theme because I couldn't understand it. And I told her, I said, no matter your intentions, the way we feel as children, like from an early age, the way people make us feel, it dictates and determines the story that we tell ourselves about them and about ourselves. because of the way she made me feel, I felt as if she didn't like me, as if she didn't love me. I felt as if I was a burden. I was a nuisance. And I felt it loudly. And I guess it triggered those core wounds in me that developed later, where I told myself this story. I didn't have the discernment that I have now, and I internalized it, and I told myself as a child that this person didn't like me based on the energy that I felt coming from her, based on the way I seen her interact with other people. And the fact that my siblings didn't feel the same way that I felt. They thought that I was overreacting. And I just created another story that they were treated differently. That's why they didn't feel it. And now looking back, knowing who I am as a person, knowing my gifts, knowing that I am sensitive to energy, what I was actually feeling, it wasn't her lying or manipulating me and not being accountable and honest about the way she showed up for me, the way I felt, and being in denial at all. At least not intentionally, anyway. I made my truth that I created her truth in order for it to make sense to me. And now I realize that what if all along she was telling the truth? What if my truth wasn't her truth, but what I was actually picking up was her unprocessed emotions, her unfiltered, raw energy while she was triggered, while she was stressed, while she was frustrated. So not only was I watching that frustration play out, but I was also feeling the energy behind it, the unprocessed, raw emotions that everybody has. It's that first thoughts that come up when we're triggered. It's that ego. It is that frustration. It is those things that we think in our head that we wouldn't say out loud. The moment when we're triggered, before we have time to process the thought and make logical sense of it and calm ourselves down before reacting. And there I was feeling it so harshly. And in my mind, because I could feel it, because I was watching the way my siblings were treated a little bit differently to me, because of my own internal insecurities and wounds and not having that discernment as a child to know any different and not internalize it, I made it about me. I automatically, to make it make sense, created this narrative that she just didn't like me, that I was treated differently, that she was mean to me, that she didn't love me, that I was unwanted. And most kids would think that there was something wrong with them. But I showed up and I was such a people pleaser that I didn't think that I wanted that love more than anything. But the energy was so loud. And it's not until now that I'm an adult, now that I'm a mum, I know what it feels like to have a lot on your plate. I know what it feels like to have your own burden, your own trauma, and your own triggers, and not having the tools. You don't always show up correctly, even when you do. And my brother and my sister, they didn't hear those internal thoughts. They couldn't feel the energy that was being projected onto them, but I did. So when I called out the behavior and pointed out how I was treated differently and how I felt unloved, and she would always say, no, I treat you all the same, or I don't treat you any differently, or I don't love you any less. It felt like a lie. It felt like that wasn't the truth, because that underlining feeling of how she made me feel was so loud. And it just really got me thinking in relationships as well, even with my exes. I really took on the way that they treated me. It kind of dictated for the longest time how I felt about myself, how I felt unworthy of that love that I never had in my childhood. And I would fill in the blanks. I'd fill in the silences, the unsaid words. I would feel the energy, and I would revert back to that narrative. I would feel the projection on their unhealed wounds that they were projecting onto me, their frustration. And I took it on board and I internalized it. And I created this narrative within myself that they must have felt a certain way about me because of how they made me feel. And they would always say, it's not you. You didn't do anything wrong. You are enough. And I couldn't receive it at times because I had created these stories that made me feel like I wasn't enough because of the way these people made me feel. I didn't feel like I was safe. I didn't feel like I was loved. I didn't feel like I was valued because I felt the unprocessed emotion that came when they were triggered without actually waiting to hear what came after, because my wounds held on to that to confirm a narrative that I'd told myself for the longest time. And maybe after all this time, it was merely a projection of the thoughts we have before we have that voice of reason that calms us down and brings us back to earth.